someone who was considering therapy but feeling hesitant, what would you say to encourage them to take the first step?
Listen, 50 minutes about you. Like, wow, 50 minutes that you don't have to like do the interaction and you don't have to like ask the other person how you are. It's 50 minutes where we give you the mic. And for me, it's like...
Such a good sell, by the way. Well, that is a really good way of saying.
Really? You don't want that?
Yourself.
Like, literally, you don't want that? Someone to just be curious about you and like, you know, not analyze only, but like just dissect everything with you and to put everything back in order. But for me, it's like, I mean, listen, when someone tells me this, the first question is why? And I'm genuinely curious. You know, some people, they're like, I don't think someone can help me with that. Okay, great. I'll then address that. Some other people say, you know, I don't need it. I already am working on myself, which is great. And I really do praise that. But then I say, you know, it's literally, and I always give like the gym analogy. Like, it's literally as if you were telling me, like, I go to the gym and I do my own workout. Great. At least you're working out, which I'm really happy about. But then it's almost like you could also have a PT with you to help you optimize some of the stuff. Maybe there's a move that you're doing, but you're not doing it properly. So there's someone with you on that journey.
Hello and welcome to the Third Culture Therapy podcast with me, Layla Maghribi, where we explore the intricate, sometimes difficult, but always fascinating relationship between heritage and mental well-being. To our regular and new listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode is with Dr. Nicole Nasr, whose voice you just heard at the start, and who is a psychologist, entrepreneur, and founder of Journey Starts Here, a platform that's transforming the way clients and mental health practitioners connect. Nicole's career began with a deep passion for human connection, shaped by her global upbringing in Montreal, Beirut, and London. These experiences gave her a profound understanding of cultural identity, generational trauma, and the universal need for healing. In this conversation, we'll explore Nicole's inspiring pivot from therapist to tech founder, the role of therapy in her own personal transformation, and how her innovative platform is not only connecting people to mental health support, but also revolutionizing the field itself. If you've ever wondered about the power of therapy, the entrepreneurial spirit, or how cultural identity shapes our mental well-being, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Thank you, Nicole, for joining me here on Third Culture Therapy.
Thanks for inviting me and thanks for that intro.
Yeah, you're most welcome. It's nice to hear out your own intros, isn't it? Yeah. I think it's probably one of the quickest hacks to like feel good about yourself.
Yeah, you were reading and I'm like, wow, like, yeah, I did do all of that. It's nice.
Look at me. Do you ever feel otherwise, like, oh, wow, I didn't do all of these things? Because you juggle a lot of roles.
I do juggle a lot of roles, but I think it's a personality, right? Like, you always want a bit more. There's definitely greediness and, you know, ingrained in me, which I am very much working on, but also trying to like channel that greed that, you know, in the past when I was a bit younger was like more, you know, towards materialistic stuff. Really tried now to channeling it into more mission things, being more intentional about what I'm trying to do. So if there is more and the desire for more, it comes from the right place, not from a place of lack, in that sense.
But I wanted to sort of start off our in-depth by asking you about your company. You created this company, Journey Starts Here, with the aim of plugging a gap that you saw in the mental health industry. And you created a platform so that therapists, practitioners, and clients could be better matched, better connected. What inspired you to create the platform? And what were the challenges you were trying to address?
Pre-pandemic, let's say, I've never seen a client online. It was always face-to-face. And then when the pandemic happened, I also started posting a bit more videos on Instagram. And one thing that I noticed was just the amount of people that suddenly saw me as like a reference point, either to ask questions or to become their therapist. That showed me that, okay, wait, these are all people that like were just on Instagram scrolling, checking things out, and then found someone and then decided to like contact me on DM. So that I started thinking about that. And then every time I would go out or meet someone, everybody, the moment that they know that I'm a therapist, first question is, do you know someone? I've been looking for a therapist. Mm-hmm. Okay, how long have you been looking? Sometimes, literally, I met someone the other day, they're like, I've been thinking about it since 2019. Like, wow, that was like 5 years ago and you're still like flirting with the idea. Why didn't you do it? I don't know where to start really. I don't know like who's the right person. I mean, every time I Google, therapists in London, generally are, anyone to do it in their cities, you get like 36 pages of Google results. How do you pick? How do you choose? So I looked a bit more into this and I'm like, why is it so hard for these people to find the right therapist or even coach? And although there are many platforms out there, right? Many, many platforms. Yeah. So then you're like, okay, still what's happening? And then you realize that all these platforms do this thing where you still need to go and find the platform. You still need to go and search and I've been saying this to the practitioners that like we have to change the way that we can't wait for clients to come to us. We have to go to them. And that's basically what happened with my Instagram page. Suddenly I was appearing on people's algorithms. Suddenly people would share a video of something that I would say. I would literally land on their phone in front of them, while they're like maybe sleeping, they're like sleeping, they're in bed, they're just, chilling on Instagram. And then I'm coming to them. And so then I'm like, all right, so why aren't therapists going to clients in that way? And the answer is super simple. We're not business people. Like I studied 9 years. I was never, ever asked to take a business class, marketing, accounting, nothing. Yet I'm expected to operate like a self-employed human, out there in the professional world. And then you look at platforms like LinkedIn, which are great, but they don't resonate with our profession. They really, really don't. We're being a therapist or a coach, there's 1 million of us in the world for a world made of billions of people, literally 1 million.
Wow.
Give or take, 10%, but 1 million for this whole population. What we do is very rare. And it's also, I really see it as like it's a profession that needs to be protected. And the people that do it, I don't want them to be wasting time on figuring out, how to do Instagram and a website and work on SEO and all that stuff. You don't need to do that. I want Journey to take care of you so you can take care of other people. Some of those things obviously are important. But what's really, really important, and I don't know if you've ever been in therapy yourself.
Yeah, I have.
The connection that you have with your therapist or with your coach is more important than anything else in the therapy. So I could have, 5 doctorates and know all the techniques and have done all the trainings in the world. If I don't know how to build a connection or there's no connection with that specific person, forget it.
Yeah. I've had both experiences. I've had experiences where I had a very good, easy connection with someone. Maybe on the face of it, I wouldn't have expected. And then I had the complete opposite, someone who I thought would be typically ideal for me in terms of that, but then the chemistry just wasn't there. And I gave it a couple of months, and then I had to do that awkward breaking up with your therapist thing. And then all of that jazz, yeah. So,
and we're lucky in this. You're lucky in the sense that you still gave it a shot. I was looking at stats. 15% of people in the world that struggle with mental health issues will go for therapy or coaching. From those 15%, 60% of them struggle to find the right match. And from those 60%, 1 in 2 will just abandon the idea of looking for another therapist if that first match was not successful. So already very few people are looking for help.
It really does. You're taking a lot of people out at every
but at least we're doing something with it. And that's why I'm like, if the technology is there anyway, I know that especially in our field, we can be very resistant to that kind of changes. So we're giving workshops, like we had a workshop on how to write articles that are going to appear on Google in a better way. But also, I don't want you to worry about all the technical stuff. So all we did is like, you pick the topic, you write about anything that you want. Just tell us what the topic is, and we'll help you find the keywords, because keywords are what Google, all the technical stuff that they really don't give two shits about. They don't have the mental space to learn that stuff. I don't have the mental space to learn that stuff.
I mean, this is the thing increasingly in so many sectors. We're being called upon to become these one people bands of doing everything. I mean, I feel that even in my job, that I want to be able to just focus on the reading and the conversations and like really getting in depth, especially in this space, right? It's mental health. At the end of the day, we're not talking like apples and oranges here. We're really something that needs that weight. And then on top of that, to be asked to become like a marketeer and a self-promoter and a speaker and a inspirer and all of that's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. And it's, it's also not what we like doing. Some of the practitioners are lucky enough if they really like, being on Instagram and doing that stuff. But most of us don't. And our job is really one of the most demanding jobs in the world, and also one of the most dangerous. So if we're not, doing, taking care of ourselves properly, if we're not conducting our work in an ethical way, but also, and for me, the ethical way is actually being a reflective practitioner. If you don't have the time to have, that space for you so that you can attend to it, you can't do your job properly. And the world now, the standard of the world, if you're not on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, you have a website, you're writing articles, you're doing podcasts, you're doing all that stuff, you're competing. Exactly. But you're competing with people that are doing all that stuff. It's really hard.
Yeah.
So it's like, you do the stuff that you know how to do. We'll take care of the stuff that you really don't want to be doing.
Right. Crucial for you, both as a therapist and, as the founder of this company, what do you see as being a good match, a good client-therapist match? And what can people look out for, or should they look out for when they're searching for one?
Literally, it is a journey. It's also a never-ending journey, but it's also the most beautiful one, the one that you take inside. And I take it from my own experience. I mean, obviously, I knew that I needed therapy, but also when it came to my inner work, my own spiritual awakening. When I say spiritual, by the way, I don't mean spiritual religion, spirits. I don't know what. What I'm talking about is the quest of my spirit, of my soul. So understanding where I come from, what am I made of, what's my purpose, what's my potential, so all of that. And I really didn't know where to start. If it wasn't for my therapist who was guiding me through the whole process, I really didn't know where to start. And that's for when you are a client and you're coming on Journey's platform, we give book recommendations, podcasts to listen to, meditation for you to do. Our Instagram page is so important. We tell all of our therapists, whenever you match with someone, give them the Journey's Instagram, because it's not enough. It is already enough to go to therapy or to coaching, but it's also what you do in between your sessions. And a lot of people don't want to go to therapy or coaching. They're not ready.
Or they're not ready, yeah. They're not at that stage, because it is a journey, as you say. And going back to what you said earlier, this person, who said they've been thinking since 2019 for a therapist, yet probably difficulty finding the right one, but also where they're at in their readiness to go. But you're right about also these little bits in between sessions are what kind of keep you going or build up some of the gaps in knowledge.
So my own journey was very much made of all these things. Books, I did a whole doctorate, imagine, 9 years of studying. I never read a book cover to cover. I wasn't able to sit and just read. I wasn't able to do that. The thoughts, the agitation, all of it. I wasn't able to do that. Post therapy, I'm doing one book every month, 2 months, so which is very big for me. Obviously, I don't have time, so it's just before going to sleep, I'll go through 4 or 5 pages, or if I'm on vacation. But you have to. It's work. It really, really is work. The same way that we work on our bodies, the same way that we work in our professional jobs. It's attending to that is also work. On the other hand, it's the matchmaking, obviously, to help ease that process. We want to remove all the barriers as much as we can. And we ask you, the algorithm is still not out. It's going to be hopefully done in the next 3 months. But through that, we ask very, very specific questions. And those questions are going to extract all the information that, let's say, if I was meeting you and and you told me you want to be matched with a therapist, there are specific questions that I would ask, but also there's a feel of you that I will get. As a human, I'm connecting with you. There's a feel, whether it's your posture, whether it's the way that you speak, whether it's the way that, you ask for a drink. I'm picking up on all these things as a human. Now, it's great, but it's not scalable. So what I want to try to do, what we are doing, is that I want an algorithm to be able to do that thinking. But in order for that algorithm to be able to think like a therapist or someone that is doing the matchmaking, I need to collect very specific information. So you'll see that the questionnaire that we're going to have is going to be, I would say, 50% similar to what everybody else asks, which are normal questions like, are you self-paying? Are you, why are you coming to this space and all? But the other 50% are very, very, very specific questions. And on the other side, because obviously I need to match you with the practitioner, the onboarding of the practitioners on the platform is also all going to be optimized in a way to really, really try to understand what's your style. So for a therapist, I don't need to know, are you married? Do you have children? How was your relation? I don't need to know that.
Yeah.
What I need to know is your expertise and your style, your practicing style. So again, we're coming up with like very specific questions and matrix, to be able to evaluate the answers that the algorithm will process. And then the matchmaking in itself, that's what I'm going to Berlin for this week, to know exactly from psychological knowledge and all the studies, to know exactly what to match with what.
That's amazing. That sounds really big, really big. And it's funny, as you were thinking it, I was doing this direct translation into like a real world example of me right now. I'm currently searching for a new therapist. So I had a therapist before. We were sort of speaking together. I was going to say we were together, but it is kind of like we were together. We were together in a relationship, in a client practitioner relationship for a couple of years. It's been maybe just under a year. And I didn't really feel like in the past year I wanted to have a therapist. Anyway, for a variety of reasons, I feel like I want to speak with someone now. And even being in this space, right, podcast about mental health, I'm connected with a lot of people in this. I still did the classic thing where I messaged another psychologist friend of mine. I was like, hey, do you have any recommendations? And then she sent me a bunch and I clicked. Each one had a different website. Each one had to read their thing. Then I narrowed it down. And now I'm like, oh, God, I have to write to each one an email and explain myself. And you know what? I have it. It's on my to-do list. And I keep kicking the can like down the road. I do a little bit of the task each day.
Can I ask you something? Imagine, because part of what we offer our practitioners is a very, very, very detailed profile page. Okay. So again, LinkedIn is great, but LinkedIn tells you where you studied and where you're working. Great things, but I generally don't care where my therapist studied and is working at. That's very, I don't care. What I care about is what can I expect in your sessions? What's your style? What I care about is what are the books that you read and you recommend? What I care about, again, is what kind of podcasts are you really into? Do you meditate or not? What kind of article have you written? Have you done any kind of work? I also want to I would love to, everybody Googles their therapist because they want to find information about them. All of my clients, without any exception, have Googled me and have found like I did a TED talk, I did this, I did that. But they need to have that information. They need to see, or if they came through Instagram, they saw some of my videos, so they know how I speak. They need to know what to expect. And fair, literally fair. You're about to walk into a room with a complete stranger, and you're going to just say all that stuff to, like, it's hard. So people want to prepare in any way that they can. So it's all these different things so that when you go on their profile and you read on that, you don't even need to get on the call with them. You can, by reading all that information and getting that, you get a feel of who they are. And if they have a video on it, even better. Yeah. Because that should be enough usually for you to make a consent decision. Now, some people, I'm going to say this, it's really not directed to you, but some people feel that they need even more and even more and even more. That in itself is something to work on, right?
Right, if you're like over Googling.
Exactly. So some people, they have difficulty trusting the process, trusting nobody, really need to that's having a bit of a control problem. So then hopefully, the therapist picks up on that and you can work on it. But it's that I've always thought about it because I struggle to find my therapist. Imagine, I'm a therapist. I had no idea where to go. No idea. And the way that I found my therapist, super telling. It is, right? It really is. Because, fine, I know more or less which approach I wanted, but it's like, how can I still trust them? It's a connection.
I want to circle actually back into you as a therapist. Being a therapist is obviously still part of your work. But something I've heard you say, you wanted to do this from a young age, that you were drawn to psychology and drawn to understanding people better, and that you were very sensitive to sort of the needs of people around you. Can you describe a bit, like, your younger years? What was it that drew you to therapy and to becoming a psychologist?
Well, I'll tell you the first thing that I wanted to become when I was younger. There are videos of me just saying this to my mom. I didn't know even what those letters meant, but I would look at my mom and be like, I want to be the CEO of a company. She's like, what? And I'm like, I want to be the CEO of a company. That completely, but I forgot that. And then I said I want to be either the wife of a diplomat or I want to be a diplomat myself. But again, for I think this was generally for the wrong reasons. I wanted to travel and, have that kind of lifestyle and all. What's really nice about both of these things is that without even realizing, I came full circle back to those things that I wanted to be when I was a young kid. So I did my doctoral thesis on the psychological impact of being the wife of a diplomat. And I married someone who, his father was a diplomat. So his mom was, and that, like, just crazy how that
strong manifester.
But without even realizing, right? And then the CEO thing, I'm like, I remember the first time I had to write my signature, I'm like, it like all came to me. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted. But the therapist thing was never a thing until I would say like maybe 15, 16. I was very good. I wouldn't say I was a good listener, but I was very good at giving advice and taking charge. Like that was something that I was very, very good at. And, when you're at school, there's always this one person that people go to for I became that person very quickly, but also I was in need of advice, if that makes sense. So I was really no one to lead the pack at all, but somehow people were drawn to that. And I was very wise from a very young age, but also very immature, right? And then
lots of you were
so many. And now I understand that, like, okay, it's all the sides that, like, I know that my essence was very wise, but then, the child was insecure in some places, so needed. So I now understand all of that. And then my uncle was studying at university around the time where I was like 14, 15. And he told me you should become an organizational psychologist. Said psychology really suits you, but the organizational part, you're very good at like public speaking. You're very good at giving presentation. You can work a big crowd. And I was like, okay, but then banks and all that. I'm like, I'm not sure, but psychology 100%. So I only applied to one university, one major, and that was it. I was like, it's either I get it. Yeah. I'm like, but even my parents, I remember asking this to my mom a couple of years ago. I'm like, when it came to my brother and my sister's major, you guys had so much to say. So when I told you guys I want to become a therapist, forget in Beirut, Lebanese parents, very non-therapy, very, very engineering, doctor, blah, blah. And I'm like, I want to be a psychologist. And I asked my mom, why didn't you fight back? And she said, because you just felt like you knew what you wanted to do. And that's it. Like there was it's not that there was no room for us to debate. If we wanted to debate, we would have done it. But there was just it felt you were so trusting of it. So we just let you go on with it, which I think is such a nice answer. So I did that. And then I still wasn't sure exactly, because when you graduate in psychology, you have many different routes that you can take for what you want to do later. And I wasn't really sure about the therapy one. I tried to create like a business at that age. I was always very drawn to that like self-employment life. My dad is also an entrepreneur, so there was very much a psych lifestyle around the house. And then I landed very luckily an internship at a hospital in Beirut, where I was just like shadowing the team on the psychiatric ward. I'm like, you know what? I just graduated. I have no idea what I'm about to do, so let me just do that. I did that for a month, and then one of the psychiatrists asked me if I wanted to work with him at the outpatient clinic, just to be like his clinical assistant. And I said yeah, because again, I didn't have a plan, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it so much. But the biggest negative for me was actually having to go back to university and study. So again, weirdly enough, I hated reading, writing, studying. Like don't put me in a room. But I had to do that. And the moment I accepted that, and my parents, it was either I go back to Montreal, and that would have taken me 7 years, or I do it in London and it's 4 years. And my parents were like, my dad, he knew, he's like, she won't do the 7 years. I know her. So let's cut it by half. And that was it. And it was just, it's so intimate and it's such a privilege. It really is a privilege when you're in this room and you have someone that trusts you with their story and their secrets, and they just like give themselves to you in that way. Like, honestly, what a privilege. Yeah. And I don't take any session, any client for granted. I'm like, it's, and I say it to them. I'm like, when they share something, I'm like, thank you. Honestly, thank you for letting me in. And I'm a junkie for connection. That's my thing. That's literally my thing. Many drugs out there, that's my drug. I really, really like it. Yeah, it is a good drug. And if you're good at your job, at this job, you really get a lot of it.
How do you think that your upbringing, your moving between Montreal, Beirut, and London has shaped your perspective and your approach as a therapist?
Weirdly enough, I don't feel very Canadian, if that makes sense. Because, so I was like a first generation. So my parents it was very Lebanese at home, like all their friends also. So all of the, their kids, like we were very much surrounded by that. So moving to Lebanon, actually, I fell in love with Beirut. Like, I don't know. Have you ever?
It's an easy place to fall in love with, Sirti. There isn't a person who's mean who hasn't fallen in love. Yes, yeah, I lived there for a while. My mother's Syrian, and she lived there for many years after the civil war broke out. So I would visit many times, and my sister lived there. And even from years ago, used to visit Beirut a lot. From Damascus to Beirut, it's barely a highway between them. So it's literally a highway between them. So yeah, for better or worse, we are forever connected. Yes, but Beirut, yeah, you fell in love with Beirut.
Fell in love with it, but fell in love with also I realized, Beirut is like a toxic boyfriend that you have. It's like you love, hate it, and then you hate it. Like, and it like gives you the best days of your life, the worst days of your life. It's a blessing, it's a curse. It's like, it's all these things. And for the longest time, like I was so attached to it, honestly, so attached. But how that relationship with a city shaped me and my views was that I understood toxicity is a lot more than just a relationship with a person. Toxicity or wanting, desiring things for the wrong reasons sometimes. It really is everywhere around your life, And also just saying this, one thing that also popped to my mind is that so I have like a pre-therapy era and then a post-therapy era, my own therapy. My pre-therapy era was so in love with Beirut, so in love with chaos, so in love with couples therapy, weirdly enough. I used to love seeing couples. And like when they would fight, I was very good at like managing that. I was very able to tolerate it and all of that. Post-therapy, anything that gets to my energy and that I can't. So I not only have I not seen a couple, I have rejected couples where I don't want to be in that dynamic anymore. My relationship with Beirut has also changed, where whenever I travel, I'm a lot less in Beirut. I'm actually a lot more in the quieter places. I stay at home with my parents a lot more. I have a different relationship to it. So it's like I'm very protective of my well-being, of my energy, where I'm like, not many people or things need to get to really go inside. But also, coming from like a Lebanese family, it's not just, when I say a Lebanese family, it's not just my family, it's Lebanese families in general. It's Lebanon, it's the citizen, it's the region. We're not very good at reflecting. We're very good at brushing it off or finding solution, because we've had to survive, always. I look at my parents like it was, and I don't know if you have a similar experience, but, if I would fight with someone at school, it was never like, what did you do? What happened? How is she making you feel? Why did that create that reaction? She's probably jealous.
Oh my God. Yes, every single time.
Every single time. And I'm like, what? Like, huh? Yeah. And you're like, jealous of what? Like what can it be? And
how and also just so unhelpful fundamentally for like when you're 8. And you haven't been invited to the party.
But like from 8 until like forever. And you're like, okay, is there any other explanation? But I don't blame my parents at all for not, because they don't know how to do that. They never really had to like sit and reflect on their feeling. So that brings a lot of chaos when you're either avoidant or you are solution focused or you're reactive. Problems are going to happen, whether it's in your family. I mean, it's not a coincidence that you talk to all those, any Lebanese family, I promise you there's going to be problems and drama somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
The brother doesn't speak to this brother, the cousins fall, always.
Yeah.
Why? Because the communication channels are so limited. So limited.
You describing sort of your relationship with Beirut and Lebanon, I think, was also really interesting to hear that you can be familiar with something and understand it and work it almost very well, but doesn't mean that actually you should. It's kind of like a phrase. Yeah, at some point it helped me do a bit of a switch. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, just because you can understand this, or just because this makes a lot of sense to you or feels very comfortable and familiar, doesn't mean that's where you should run to. But also just the therapeutic journey that you talk about, which is the pre and the post, and that in some ways, I think often what happens during the healing process is that even your tolerance for certain things just reduces massively, because you see things differently now, and you no longer really want it. You're just not desiring of it in the same way. And ironically, even though perhaps the ability to withstand is higher, right? Because you're in a way stronger, like you've been to therapy and all that, but somehow on the flip side, you're just like, nah, I just don't want this anymore.
But you know why? I've described this to a client of mine. I do a lot of metaphors. That's how I understand things. It's like, it's like, imagine there's a layer here that is just super stormy. And then it's like when you're on a plane and there are turbulences, it's because sometimes they're just like in an area that like has that. But then if they reach like a certain level, it calms down. Before, I was in that place where like I was just very reactive. That's the word. You're just reactive. Things are happening. You're in them, blah blah. Whereas now, what this has given me, I can still see it. I can still interact with it, but I see it from a completely different place where like whatever you do is not affecting me anymore. Yeah. So even if there are problems that are personal life and all, my relationship with it is so different. Yeah. The distance,
it doesn't hit in the same way. It the punches maybe, don't land in quite as hard. And also your choice of whether you want to interact with it or not is different. There's also your connection, or the way you connected in a way, you and your love of Beirut, let's say, and also the sort of the psychic relationship among its citizens. It's sort of a reflection also of the country overall, and possibly the region overall, right? In that chaos and that lack of communication, and these like things that are not really dealt with and addressed. And I wonder if your experience of having that background, having also a third culture background, do you feel like you're able to connect with them a bit better? Or do you also deal or witness some of the issues from this more culturally nuanced perspective? How does it inform your practice?
If you are to work with people that are either marginalized or are going through very specific experiences that are related to their culture, or it's really understanding their history. This is not about just this Arab client or this Black client or this. It's about everything that they represent, and when I love this quote from Maya Angelou that says that you present as one, but you come as 10,000, and that's what, the moment that you understand this as a therapist, you understand that this is not just about this client, And I've heard so many people say like, I used to see a therapist that was, let's say, white American or white Canadian or whatever. And, when I would tell them about my relationship with my mom, they would just say like, okay, enough, just like cut her out. And you're like, but you can't do that. You really cannot do that. And I also have had moments where like, the Western part of me, because the Western part of me is I would say even sometimes bigger than the Middle Eastern part of me. I mean now I'm because we're raising funds for Journey, so I'm doing a lot of like applications and all. And when they ask for ethnicity, I generally the thing that I write that makes the most sense to me is actually Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Which is so. I mean, I even went on ChatGPT. I'm like, is that even an ethnicity?
It's apparently there are some efforts for a revival. You're not the first person who recently has been like, actually, I'm Mediterranean.
Yeah, because I relate to that. I relate so much to that. I feel very close to Italians, to Greek, to Spanish, a lot more than I do to just people in the Arab countries. Like, and you realize that like, fine, we might share a language. I mean, for me anyway, I share a language. I don't share the same religion as as more people in the Arab countries, but I don't necessarily relate too much to that. However, I have worked there. I have lived there. I have parents that like relate to it more than I do. The customs, the the values, all of that. I have friends that also share different religions, and I really really get it. But the Western part of me also sometimes will tell clients that are from the region, or Black clients, where I'm like boundaries and all of that, and they're like, boundaries? Like, what are you talking about? My mom just opens the door in the I say, and I sometimes have to remind myself that, like, listen, you've made peace with all these parts of you. Your clients sometimes haven't, And again, when you start thinking about like all the ancestors, all the history, everything that they carry, and I read so much about it, how much we carry all that generational, whether it's the trauma, whether it's even, the strength, all of it, it's in your DNA.
Yeah.
It is in your DNA. So whenever I meet someone and I can see that this is more than just them, it's what they represent. I'm so curious, like I have a Caribbean client. I'll read about it. I'm like, I need to understand the history. And, being white Caribbean is also very different from being like Black Caribbean. So you want to understand these things. And obviously, not being white European or white American, it gives you a bit of this edge in the sense that like you get it, you're also mixed, like you're also not your lineage is not that straightforward. Like we understand that it's a plus. Like I see this as such a beautiful privilege, And just one last thing that I'll add, I have so many clients that will seek me specifically because I'm Lebanese living in London.
Yeah.
They love that.
Yeah.
And not only they need that. Because a lot of my clients, if they were to see someone that stayed in Lebanon, of course you understand some stuff, but you don't understand a lot of the expats' troubles, And being an expat, I would say, like, if I could put it down, it's like I'm a Mediterranean expat. But it's literally what my identity is.
A Mediterranean expat. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of different ways to call it, but this idea of, third culture kind of sits in that, of this idea of being not from the place of your parents, but it can be expanded. Some people call it global nomad or global citizen, Mediterranean, whichever it connects. But it is this understanding of diversity and cultural awareness. And it sounds like you bring all of that to your practice as a therapist, and obviously you're trying to expand that as a founder of this company to expand that to others. If you like this episode and are looking to find out more, then please do visit Third Culture Therapy Pod on Instagram, YouTube, and Substack, and listen to the show on all the usual channels. And please do consider supporting our work by donating a cup of coffee or two to the team via our Patreon. But I wanted to drill in a bit on the therapy, like life as a therapist, because obviously therapy is very popular. It's very idealized in popular culture now, right? And, for better or worse, but it's great that the conversation in mental health has really expanded and there's a lot more awareness around it. Maybe less great sometimes is how many sort of Instagram psychologists there are at the moment, i.e. not necessarily actual practicing psychologists, but a lot of people who are entering this space maybe not fully aware of all of the things that they should be aware of. So I want to ask you, what is real life as a therapist like? Or rather, what are some of the misunderstandings and misconceptions you see or you think people have about that world?
I don't think people really understand the world. I think it's like mysterious. Like, you're supposed to help me deal with like these really big things in my life. How? It's like how? Like, just I come like 15 minutes per week.
Yeah.
And we talk, like that's all I do. I speak to you. Look. So what happens in the room is still very mystic for people. They're like, I don't know what happens in that room. They get it. Like they get that you talk. But I mean, how many times have I heard like, that's it? Like, I'm like, yeah, what are we supposed to do more than that? But it's a form of therapy, right? Life as a therapist is very, I mean, I love it. Like, and I realize it's really one of those professions that if you don't love it, you can't do it. It's heavy, and every session, you also have to like show up as like, it's not, anyway, the kind of therapy that I do is very relational. So there's a connection. It's like every time they come in, it's, I always have this image that like I jump into one world, hour by hour. It's like, and you really jump. When you jump, you're just like, wow, like that's all the stuff. And you have to put order, and then you have to help, and then you have to feel with them, and you have to go through them in the journey. And then 50 minutes are up. Okay, now I'm jumping into someone else's world, and then into someone else's world. So and hence also, by the way, when you do the training here in the UK as a doctoral training, first year you start by seeing 3 clients a week. Second year, you're like at 6. Third year, you're maybe at 10.
Wow.
Rarely at 10. Like I think I would see 10, but like you have to see somewhere around like 7, 8. So they really like build you up for you to understand what it feels like. At my peak, at some point, I was seeing like 35 clients a week when I started, like when I was working, which one can also argue that it could be a lot. So there would be a moment I finished the day, I just like jump into the shower, and I'm just like, I need like leave my head, all these stories, all that stuff.
So is that when you started to feel that
complete burnt out?
That's when you burnt out.
Complete burnt out. I would say like I had in my life maybe like 3 burnout, but by the third one, I understood exactly what it was. Like I now understand the symptoms that come from my burnout. But it's like when you're carrying so many people, so many emotions, and that's what we do. It's like you give us that stuff, and we carry it for you until you are equipped well enough to carry it for yourself,
right?
Especially at the beginning. And you have like, and I do pride myself in this, is that people come in, they can trust me. So when you can trust someone, just like a kid does with their parent, you let go. And when you let go, like the parent really has to like take a lot, right?
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And that was always okay. Fine. I loved it. There would be moments that it would be too much, but I would do Christmas 5 weeks, 4 weeks, Easter 3 weeks, and then summer 5 to 6 weeks off. When I say off, it's like I wouldn't even bring my laptop with me. I'm off. Like I want to forget my own name. And then what I would do is that, okay, when I start missing them, I'm like, just thought about this client. Oh, I'm wondering what they're doing. When I started missing them, I'm like, okay, give me another week and I'm ready to go back. And then when I go back, I would like full of energy, 3 months in a row. And then, so I had that kind of structure. But then Journey came in and just like messed everything up.
So it was Journey that sent you into overdrive, you mean? Or?
The first time, no. The first time it was too many clients, the pandemic itself.
Okay.
I was preparing, like my husband and I, we were engaged. We were preparing our wedding. And then that for me was like the catalyst, was like we had to cancel it. It was a lot for me. I don't know what my wedding represented in my eyes, but it represented too much. And I had to sacrifice a lot, and I have to come back. And that, like, it took me over. And this is where it was around 2021, summer of 2021, I started having like massive panic attacks. And I actually got married in August 2021. So at my own wedding, I was just having like panic attacks one after the other. I didn't eat, I didn't drink. But it's a blessing in disguise. Honestly, it's a blessing in disguise, because that led me to a place where I wasn't able to cope anymore. I couldn't leave the house for a couple of weeks. Like if I was to go and meet someone, it was, anyone that has experienced panic attacks or anxiety, you know how bad it is. And I remember, like, even on my honeymoon, I was like in Kenya, in the middle of Masai Mara, and it's like pitch dark. There, it's like literally, like if the sun is not out, there's no light, right? And it was just pitch dark. And I remember having this massive panic attack. Like I genuinely thought like I was going to die. And you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no hospital. There's no. But you see, that kind of stuff that now I understand that it was just my body being like, enough. You've been ignoring all that stuff. You haven't been processing it. You're trying, to cover it up with this and this and that. Enough. And that's me being a therapist. But there was one session I remember, such a bad session, where my client was like in tears and he wasn't doing well. And I had a panic attack in the middle of it. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I need to leave and get myself to the hospital. I don't know what's going on with my heart right now. And that was like, this for me was like my lowest point. when you have your own client that is taking care of you, he's like, are you going to be okay? Do you want me to watch it to the hospital? And I'm like, no, please just like almost ignore that this is happening. I'm so sorry. Like I had to apologize. It was horrible. It was horrible. And then that got me to therapy. For the first month and a half of therapy, it got worse because it's normal. Everything starts coming out and you feel overwhelmed. But then instantly, by February, I was like brand new.
Wow.
Brand new completely.
Gosh, what a journey you went through. Yeah, I mean, it sounds really rough. I've only, so I definitely suffer from anxiety historically and still a bit. It's much less than before, thank goodness. But in terms of a panic attack, I've only had one proper one. But that was, it was a weird one because I think that one was like, it opened like Pandora's box. And then after that, I didn't get quite an acute one like that, but I used to get a lot of these like heart palpitations, like racing heart, like cold sweats, like that sort of thing, you know. But the panic attack, cute, you know, the minor version. But the panic attack, I feel for you so strongly because I've only had it once and I was absolutely sure I was going to die. Like I was like 100%, oh, I'm one of these young people who got a heart attack, right? On the shop floor of Selfridges. But to think about you having it in the middle of nowhere, dark, yeah, and the client session, all of that was very rough. So I'm really glad that you're seeing it in this positive light, that it got you to therapy and got you where you need to, and then obviously precipitated all of these things, wonderful things that you're now doing and helping others. But obviously being a founder of it and, you know, CEO of a company, as well as being a therapist, how do you keep your mental health now in good shape?
It's been the friends, like the friends, but especially like a very small group of girlfriends that are just, I mean, I know that they're very special to me, but I also realize that we're special for each other. Like I'm realizing that that group is very different from all the other groups that we have in a way. And these girls are just, yeah, they're amazing. And you know, when you have that kind of community, and it's just that's something else for me. So that community of girls, they, you know, you spend one night and you feel like you've let go of mountains of, you know, piled up energy.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. But first of all, I completely relate to that on a personal level. And my girlfriends are such great cheerleaders, and having that, especially when you're building something and you have to be so self-motivating all the time, and oftentimes you're confused and a bit lost. Having those people who really love and care for you, but that you also really admire, having your back, it is like just a well of good vibes. But it's also interesting to hear, because every person so far who's come here has brought up a community as being their go-to, among other things, but always community comes into that, that's what helps them keep good mental health, which I really love. I hope we keep that as a streak for all guests. But is there anything else from your culture and your background, maybe also that you bring in, or that has influenced your mental health?
Yes. You're gonna laugh, but hosting and cooking is it's like, even now I'm going through like a big work phase and all, and my husband was like, did you want to go somewhere? Do you want to do something? And I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to throw this like massive Christmas dinner at home, and we're going to invite like 15 of our closest friends, and that's going to have, and he's like, no, I meant like for you to relax. And I'm like, that's it. That's relaxing for me. If I'm in the kitchen, I'm working with my hands, I'm creative, I'm having to, you know, create literally something, and then receiving all the people. I think there's nothing that makes me happier than to cook for the people that I love. Like really seeing them all arrive and just being on the kitchen, and every time, and they can probably attest to that, every time they're all sitting and the food is there, I generally just take like 5-10 seconds where I just look at it and I'm like, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So that comes from my culture. 100. That comes from my mom, my grandmother. That's been the motto of our lives, and that's something that I'm beyond proud to have like inherited from them. I have created my community in this kind of way. You know, once a month, every Sunday night, I gather, you know, 8 of my favorite people, and they're at home, and we're just having like that family Sunday lunch dinner, and you're like, that's important for me. That's actually, I don't need much anymore, That's what I need.
That's really beautiful. And it's very nourishing. It's very nourishing literally, but also to the soul. And again, going back to that community element, right? If someone who was considering therapy, but feeling hesitant, what would you say to encourage them to take the first step?
Listen, 15 minutes about you. Like, wow, 15 minutes that you don't have to like do the interaction and you don't have to like ask the other person how you are. It's 15 minutes where we give you the mic. And for me, it's like...
Such a good sell, by the way. About that, that is a really good way of taking.
Really? You don't want that? Like, literally, you don't want that? Someone to just be curious about you and like, you know, not analyze only, but like just dissect everything with you and to put everything back in order. But for me, it's like, I mean, listen, when someone tells me this, the first question is why? And I'm genuinely curious. You know, some people, they're like, I don't think someone can help me with that. Okay, great. I'll then address that. Some other people say, you know, I don't need it. I already am working on myself, which is great. And I really do praise that. But then I say, you know, it's literally, and I always give like the gym analogy. Like, it's literally as if you were telling me, like, I go to the gym and I do my own workout. Great. At least you're working out, which I'm really happy about. But then it's almost like you could also have a PT with you to help you optimize some of the stuff. Maybe there's a move that you're doing, but you're not doing it properly. So there's someone with you on that journey. And especially, I mean, listen, if you're in London and your insurance also like covers for it and you can have that, it's an investment. Yes, it is. Time, energy, emotions, it is. But it's the biggest gift that you can give to yourself is attending to that inner self. And that inner self, like, you know, lately, I don't know what has happened in the last year and a half. I have so many top executives that are coming to therapy. So many that are coming to their own conclusion that I want to become the best version of myself. I need to let go of so much. And when I meet people, I tell them, we're all a massive mountain. It's like we're in Everest, all of us. But then a lot of the time you have fog that covers that mountain and you don't know how big you are. You think that this is it, that's who you are, that's the layer. Coming to therapy, doing that kind of work, proper work, that's removing all the fog and you go, oh, holy fuck, like that's who I am. That's what I can do and provide. And what a gift. And then if people are like, no, I still don't. And I have learned that I need to respect that it's not meant for everybody. Not everybody actually wants to grow, is willing to grow, is ready to grow. And that has been my own self-acceptance. So you do what you have to do. You put the message, you plant seeds, but you have to be okay that some seeds are not going to flourish. They're not going to become something else. And I believe a lot in reincarnation. And I'm like, not this lifetime. Maybe not this lifetime. I try. That's my mission. I try to help people grow. But if you don't want it, even though we've put some efforts in it, I have to accept and
respect that. Yeah, absolutely. That is a personal thing. And also letting go and not letting go of that, I think also is part of the personal work, because I totally understand where you're coming from. And thank you so much, Nicole. It's been such an insightful hour with you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I wish you the best of luck with Journey. And anything that facilitates, I think, the client practitioner relationship when it comes to the space of mental health, I think is hugely welcome for everyone. So well done you, and thank you for sharing.
And thanks for creating this space, you know, and for not like inviting people that we always see on podcasts. Like I call this recycling speakers. It's really nice. Like, it's really nice of you to go after, you know, people that have voices but are not
important voices. Yeah, no, important. You're most welcome. It's a pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. I would love it if you would like, follow, and review this episode. And please share it far and wide with friends, family, colleagues, the lot. Every little click from you helps elevate this podcast, allowing me to carry on producing great content for you.